Please welcome Mr. Ravi Singh. He is going to be very interesting with you today.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, Michigan. What a week. It's amazing when you think about all these protests going on all around the country. Kids crying in school. Who knew that there'd be a national uproar about the Michigan school board elections? Who saw that one coming? They invited me to come and speak, and really the first question that I had to ask myself when I accepted is, what is a superintendent? You know, I mean, when I think of what is a superintendent, this is the only thing that came to mind was Schneider from One Day at a Time. So I was asking the wrong question. The question I needed to be asking was, who was my superintendent? And oddly enough, it came to my mind immediately. Not a lot of people remember who their superintendent was, but I immediately remembered Ernie Fleischman, Dr. Fleischman. My dream was to be Angus Young of AC/DC. You're laughing at my dream. All of the students have dreams. Can't laugh at the dream. We were a band, essentially, of millennials, the first, maybe, amongst the first. I had spent my life, actually, prior to that, working with people that were older than me, with older brothers, hiring my teachers, working with bandmates that were older than me. And all of a sudden, I was thrown into what was really a millennial mecca. This comes from the CDC. I think it's so interesting. You look at my generation. I'm a Generation X, so I'm sort of sandwiched in between the large baby. All right, give it up for Generation X. We are so important that they didn't even give us a name. But we're smaller than the boomers, we're smaller than the millennials, and we've somehow found ourselves in this pivotal role of having to work with both, which I think gives us a very interesting perspective. How do we teach entrepreneurship? Here is an entire generation that says we want to be entrepreneurial. So how does our education system foster that and do that? You know, it's one of the things that I think about are things like career pathways, for example. Does that prepare people? Prepares people for the jobs of today, but does it prepare people to create the jobs of tomorrow? Think about that. Does it prepare people to be job creators for tomorrow? It has been said that the first person to live until 150 has already been born. How do we educate for 100 years of employment? How do we do that? I wish I had that answer. But it's a way to get the conversation started. Are jobs going to come back? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't believe that promise of bringing jobs back. We have outsourced them, and where we have outsourced them to, those countries are now outsourcing those jobs to technology. They're not going to come back here. We are going to outsource, and if they did come back here, it would be so short-lived because they are going to go to technology. Artificial intelligence. I don't know if either of the main presidential candidates even mentioned artificial intelligence in any debate. So how do we prepare and educate a generation when artificial intelligence is creating artificial intelligence? Because that's where it's going to go. What happens when our gross domestic product goes up so high due to what we are producing through artificial intelligence, but unemployment grows at the same rate because it's not produced by people that are working? What do we do? How do we educate for that? We start arguably just paying people to live because governments will have sounds like socialism, doesn't it? Pay people to live. Huh? Universal basic income, exactly. So all these things have to be factored into education. Otherwise, in my opinion, we are not educating the youth for their future. We're just educating them for ours. Millennials are mobile. All of those facts, figures, and formulas are in the phone. We really don't need to teach them the facts, figures, and formulas. We just need to teach them how to find it. We think they're all just looking at their phones, but they're not. They're looking through their phones at the world. The world is on the other side of their phones. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that they have all that access. So our job is to coach them through it. Our job is to guide that process so that they are global. And they already are, because of this access. Millennials are global. And not just millennials in wealthy countries, but there are more kids in India with a Samsung phone than there are with a personal computer. And they're talking to each other across the world through these devices. It's great, actually. It's cool. This is technology we have to harness. You know, India's a fascinating country to me, obviously, because of my heritage. And one of my projects there, I partner with a boarding school in the south of India. Amazing school. We take these kids out of the villages at the age of 4, where we can still affect their brain development through nutrition. And we pay for their education through their master's degree. It's remarkable what happens. The school started by a friend of mine in 1997. We've had a full turnover. These kids work at Goldman Sachs, American Express, Deloitte, Mahindra Industries. In many cases, their families still eat insects. That's how poor these kids were. Give any child an opportunity. Give any child an opportunity. I scripted a 30-minute dialogue. After 10 minutes, they were off my dialogue. 90 minutes later, they were still talking. When they ran out of things to talk about, they started showing each other dance moves, and the kids in Los Angeles couldn't believe that some village kid in India dances like that. The whole thing ended with the kids in India beatboxing and the girls in Los Angeles dancing, all in real time. Wow. One of the proudest moments of my life. And I didn't know what to expect. And we can all do this every day in a classroom. This is Skype. This is Skype. Millennials favor peer-to-peer learning. That's the opportunity. That's the opportunity. Could world peace be that simple? Maybe. Maybe it could be. I did a press conference right after that. I said, what if we did this with young Jews and young Palestinians before we teach them how to hate each other? Think about it. Got a Buddhist, a Christian, and a Muslim. A Muslim who defends Sharia law. And I asked them to write songs together. Well, what did that look like after 2 weeks of them working together and creating together? They love each other. And I don't use that word lightly. Every day, to this day, we say hello to each other, the 16 of us. We say goodbye to good night to each other on Facebook, on WhatsApp. And they're trading, and we're all going to regroup, hopefully make a documentary film about this in July in Indonesia, and record all of it. Because it doesn't need to be any other way than this. The millennials embody what Gandhi taught us. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And they don't even realize it, which is the beautiful part. The classroom plays such an important role in this. The classroom has to do 3 things. It has to nurture talent, it has to inspire curiosity, and it has to provoke critical thinking. If the classroom does these 3 things, education lies at the intersection. That little yellow triangle. Because really, your education is what's left over after you've forgotten everything you've learned. Think about that. Education is what's left over after you've forgotten everything you learned. It's character. It's values. It's what we teach them between the facts, figures, and formulas that they already have access to on their phones. So I think we need to focus on that. It's about educating the mind, but educating the heart, the soul. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you. Thank you very much.